reclaim your rhythm, rethink the rules, rewrite your life. This is Wildly Intentional, the show where we question the scripts we've inherited and build a life, family, and legacy on purpose. If you're done living on autopilot, come with a curious mind and a courageous heart. Here, we talk about what it means to question, unlearn, create, and build what truly matters. I'm your host, Mandy, maverick mom of three, maker, family culture builder, lifelong question asker, and the friend people call when they're ready to rethink, well, everything. I'm here to shake the norms, tell the truth, and light the way forward. So today I am here with who I used to know as Veda Dave, and I met him at Hinterland, which is a concert in Iowa that I went to with Tom a handful of years ago. And there was this really relaxing tent there, and we went there and just hung out. And there was this, I could sign up for an astrology session. I got very excited by this, and I signed up to have an astrology session with Veda Dave, and he entertained Tom by talking about aliens and me with astrology and Ayurveda. And at the time, Ayurveda was like way on my radar. I was very curious about it and just so excited to meet him. And met him, had a wonderful conversation at Hinterland, kind of followed him back to his journey in Colorado. And in Colorado, he offered a program that Tom and I signed up for. And we went on this journey with him for months and dove into things like internal family systems and Ayurveda and astrology, and had astrological readings and all of these things. And it was very fruitful. Tom and I's minds were being blown over and over again. We were doing all of this while chasing all the animals on the farm and raising the kids. And it just was a lot for us to get so deep into such personal things. It was very fun, but it just like our bandwidth wasn't there. And we kind of reached a point with Veda Dave in the program where we felt like we need to take a break and pause. And what's interesting is at the same time, Veda Dave was going through a lot personally. And we just kind of like bowed out. And I stayed on his email list and I kept getting his emails. And what I was seeing was growth and him going through his own journey. And Tom and I continue to hold space for that and to honor that and to know we're going through our own journey. And I recently, as in like last week, I think, got an email from Telfer, which was a reintroduction to my friend Veda Dave. And what I read when I read that email was a genuine heart and integrity, and someone that had been on a journey that honestly looked like eerily similar to mine in a lot of ways. And I just opened the door with him again. I said, I am so proud of you, Telfer. Like, way to go. We've silently been watching you from the email newsletter, and we're just proud of you. And if you ever want to be on the podcast and share anything about astrology, Ayurveda, internal family systems, your journey, I'm here for it. And I'm happy to turn it over to my friend Telfer to talk about how that evolution went for him, the shedding of the skin, if you will, and just like what got him from Veda Dave to Telfer and how that went in his mind. So Telfer, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thanks, Mandy. It's wonderful to be here with you and so glad to be connected. Yeah, that was a wild time in life, and everyone in that program was going through it, and I think that's part of what made it so potent and problematic in some ways. And so yeah, Veda Dave got burnt out, trying to do too much for too many people. And there was a lot of self-abandonment in there. And one of the things that I recognize now is the confusion of a delivery system for an authentic identity. And those are two very different things. And so if I'm Veda Dave, who I am is Vedic astrology and Ayurveda, and this is my identity, where actually those are delivery systems, those are ways of expressing who I am, whereas who I actually am is Telfer. And so Telfer is my middle name. It's my mother's maiden name. It comes to me through my Scottish ancestry. And the etymology of it comes from French. It literally means to cut iron. And so my ancestors were indeed metal workers, and but it's also apparently a nickname for a fierce warrior, one who pierces iron, iron piercer. And then I looked on Urban Dictionary to see what they say about Telfer, and the definition there is one who destroys without malice. And so that got me thinking, like, wow, like that's so interesting. And how does that map onto who I know myself to be, the experiences I've had, and and all of a sudden my whole life sort of clicked into place. And seeing the way, like, what am I doing in astrology readings other than looking at, most people don't come to astrology when everything's hunky-dory, right? Most people come when there's some issue and they're trying to sort something out and something isn't quite fitting. And so what I was doing through the Vedic astrology is destroying without malice, giving people permission to quit that job, change that relationship, move cities, or if nothing that dramatic is happening, then at least to look at it in a new way and look at themselves in a new way and shed the skin of an old identity and recognize something more authentic to who they actually are. And then same in Ayurveda. Let's change daily habits and ways of knowing how to eat and how to interact. Ayurveda is very relational, knowing your constitution and recognizing other people's constitutions and recognizing that, oh, that person's not flighty or flaky. They're just vata. And that brings a bunch of gifts as well. And so now I know how to interact with that person better. And so all of that is an expression of one who destroys without malice. And so coming to this and claiming this family name has helped me know that, okay, on this like vertical, very centered plane, I am Telfer, one who destroys without malice. From that perspective, there's now 1,008 different ways that can express itself. And it happens, on the dance floor, in casual conversations, in my professional work. And so that's where I'm at now. And just to say, super grateful and proud of us in so many ways for navigating a really challenging time for both of us. At that time, my business was falling apart. My multi-year relationship was ending, and my whole life as I'd known it was collapsing and like imploding on itself. And this business that I built up over 8 or 10 years suddenly wasn't working the way I wanted it to or thought it could. And so that was an identity crisis. Who am I if I'm not Veda Dave? And if the world doesn't want Ayurveda and astrology from me, well, like, wh who am I and what am I doing here? And so in the aftermath of that experience, I went through, it was depressing. If these are the gifts I've got and nobody wants them, or it's not that nobody wants them, I can't deliver them in a good way. eh, then who am I and what am I doing? It was really dark night of the soul type time, and in that process, I set the whole thing down. Veda Dave went dormant for more than 2 years, and in that period, I got a job as a mover, driving a moving truck. and helping people move from one house to the next. And like looking back, what was I doing but destroying without malice, in the most loving way. Like, hey, like, great, you're going through a transition, you're moving in with your partner, awesome. ah you got divorced and now you're moving out from what has been your family home, and meeting with people in those literal physical transitional zones was in some strange way another expression of who I truly am. But at the time it was like, wait, is like is now I'm a mover? Is that really my life purpose? But I had to go through that phase to then get linked with other work, other expressions, and now here I am on the verge of 2026 and reintroducing myself to the world as Telfer.
Yeah,
So yeah, wonderful to be here with you, Mandy.
I am so glad. And I like we caught up about for over an hour, even with Tom, like before we
Yeah.
pushed record, just because it'd been a minute and we wanted to just talk about the ins and outs of life and everything that that looked like. And talking about, I mean, Veda Dave, Telfer, you have so much knowledge. I was like, I don't know what we should talk about because we could go so many ways and gifts and little nuggets that you could give the listeners. And we decided to start with our story, the Webbers and Veda Dave, because I mean, just where humanity is. And Telfer, I think you would agree with this. Like, it's a cancel culture. And there's everything in both of us that could have been like, whatever, we're good. We don't need to talk again. Um, but the thing that was consistent with both of us is we never had malice in our heart toward each other, to your point. Like, and it was never like a booing from the sidelines. It was always like, I'm here. It just doesn't feel right. And the more that we talked about this before we pushed record, it was like, this is important.
Yeah.
This is important for humans to know how to reconcile conflict resolution. Like, there are people in your lives that you've told off or done with, whether justly or not, right? And like, is there value in just keeping love in your heart and an open door? And I'm just proud of both of us that we've done that, because there's no reason that we needed to have the opposite approach, right? And I just think the cancel culture is so in your face and widely normalized, and it's not helping humanity, right? Like, what we really need to widely accept and normalize is compassion, kindness, understanding, empathy, right? And that's what we talked about, is that Tom and I played a role to that relationship. We probably said yes to something when we were in way too busy of a season, and we shouldn't have. But we never looked at that as like all Veda Dave's fault, right? Like, we looked at it as we learned a lot from you. You opened our mind to so many things. And it was also like, why was he in our life? Not just for what we signed up for, right? Because we're getting something we didn't sign up for. So, what is that telling us? What lesson are we getting from that? And that's kind of how we left. And we've been reflective about it and open and curious. Like, what is he up to? Because you're amazing. Your heart is so huge, and you give and you give. And I see a lot of myself in that.
Hmm.
And it's also just like, we need to kind of, to your point, go in and wrestle with, what are we doing? Who is
Yeah.
this for? How do I show up more authentically? What is the script I'm living? Who gave it to me? Where did this come from?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you
Absolutely.
think about that? Or,
Well, I will say, one of the greatest points of grief in that whole process was the way that the misalignments in me with my authentic self were of harm to others. And I was striving so hard to, deliver the gifts, to be of benefit and to serve and all that. And it's this paradoxical thing wherein striving so hard to the point of burnout to be of service to others I abandoned myself and therefore was not able to be of service in a good way. And I think what you said about, not canceling people, it's a really complex task to regard other people with unconditional positive regard, separating personhood from behavior, recognizing that most people, there are the sociopaths and psychopaths out there, but that's a tiny percentage of the population. Most everybody is doing the best they can, trying to get valid needs met, whether for belonging, connection, food, water, shelter. Everybody is longing for these really fundamental human needs and adopting a wide variety of strategies to get them met. And sometimes those strategies look like fighting for survival or what is perceived to be survival. And so when we can have the wherewithal and the sort of inner coherence to recognize, like, okay, this interaction is challenging right now. What are the valid needs I'm trying to get met, and what strategies am I using? And then can I get curious about what are they going through? What needs are unmet in their life that they're trying to get met? And what are the different strategies available to us to meet each other's needs? And sometimes that looks like distance. Sometimes that looks like taking space. Hey, we're in an argument. I'm just going to go to my room for a minute and take a deep breath. Anybody in a long-term relationship knows this, that you can just keep fighting it out, but at some point there's diminishing returns, and actually what you need is a moment or a day or a week to just cool your jets and come back to yourself, fill your own cup first, get in touch with who you really are and what you really want, and then you can reapproach the situation with some greater compassion, kindness, and self-awareness that then allows the other person to exist as they truly are. And it's again, it's a paradoxical thing. It's only from our own sovereign bubble where I know who I am and what I want and what I'm doing. That is the only valid access point for true connection with another sovereign being. Because if we get all melded and mushed together where we can't tell the difference, that's not actually connection. There's not two entities that are able to connect. We've merged into one amorphous blob that is sort of wonky and off balance. Um, so that's a profound relational skill, both personally and professionally, and it's a lifelong adventure, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think I just right now, like, I just want to encourage anyone listening. Like, if there's someone you've gotten a message from or someone that you feel like you've been being nudged to connect with, drop into your heart and feel like not only your energy for them, but like their energy towards you. And if it feels right, reach out. But to Telfer's point, like, if it still feels like you need to be in your room, you should listen to that too, right? Like to the point of over the years I've gotten emails and it just still hasn't felt right to reach out, and I've never rushed that being like I feel like I need to repair this. It just I always kind of left it open and sent good vibes. And I think what's interesting about this, right, is like there are probably people in your life, in my life, I don't know, probably I know for a fact, right, like that there are people in our lives that have probably have a narrative about how they are with us right now. And so I think just is that narrative one that you've made up or one that I've made up, right? Like, is that actually how they feel about you? Is there value in reaching out? There's not always, to your point. Sometimes it's diminishing returns. It's just like there are people that it's like reaching out right now might add fuel to the fire. And I'm not looking to make what they're going through worse or rougher, right? And so I think it's just honor your journey and yourself first. And then just understand and know that other people are on their own journey. And when things feel right or you're getting that nudge, reach out. and just even if it's just like congrats, like good job, or like if it feels right, great, I'm here, and if not, that's okay too. And that's all I had. And then it sparked this conversation, and I just went out to get a coffee, and Tom was like, "It was really good to see Dave. I loved that." And I'm like, "Me too." Like, and we're gonna go record. And he's like, "You haven't recorded yet?" I'm like, "No." Like we've just been talking. And he's like, "Oh my gosh." I'm like, "I know." Like it feels good again. So I'm really
Yeah,
glad you're here.
yeah. And as you're talking, it reminds me of a really powerful dream that I had again in the sometime in the year after the immersion ended, and I was on a backpacking trip in the Olympic Peninsula in the Pacific Northwest, and had this dream where I was in a walled garden. It's like a Japanese style garden, and all of a sudden there was this dragon zooming around in the garden, beautiful but like dangerous, like very attracted to the dragon, but it was like that's a dragon. And at some point it turned and was coming straight for me, and it was terrifying, but it was one of those moments in a dream where I had the wherewithal, like, nope, just let it come towards me. And it came right up to my face, and it said, "It is very important that you do two things. The first is to surrender all vengeance. And the second is," and I don't know what the second thing is. And it's wild. Like the whole dream, even to this day, is so vivid. I can still see it in HD, the whole thing. And so it's like the second thing is withheld until I make sufficient process on surrendering all vengeance. And that has been a mantra ever since. What does it look like to surrender all vengeance? And and only recently, I had another experience in the wilderness where I re-encountered that dragon, and it was part of a tree, and all of a sudden this dragon was talking to me through the tree, and I was asking, "What's the second thing? What's the second thing?" And the second thing is to destroy without malice.
Mm,
And in order to destroy without malice, and you must have surrendered all vengeance.
isn't that full
Because
circle?
if you come back to a troubled relationship or a complex situation and there's still that malice, you've still got some sense of vengeance, that's going to show up. That's going to be encoded even subtly through all your words and actions. And that is going to keep the pot stirring as opposed to, coming back to some sort of harmonious relationship. And, and so that idea of destroying without malice, I mean, to destroy seems really intense, right? And destruction is bad. But in order to become a butterfly, the caterpillar is destroyed, right? Caterpillar goes into the cocoon and dissolves into this gooey mush in order to reform into a butterfly. And then for the butterfly to become the butterfly, it must destroy its cocoon. It can't get out unless it rips that thing apart. And and so this is how I look at this destruction without malice, is like the butterfly's not mad at the cocoon. It just needs to be destroyed in order for it to live its full purpose. The ripe fruit isn't mad at the tree or the vine that grew it, but when it's ripe, it drops and leaves it behind and severs that connection. And so this is both like a literal ecological process, but it's also a more metaphorical, mythopoetic perspective on the phases we go through in our lives, both personally, from I'm not mad at Veda Dave. Veda Dave is beautiful, powerful. What an important phase of my life. It's just over. It's a cocoon that led me to Telfer. And um same with our relationship, for example. There's nothing wrong. I'm not mad about what happened. At the time, I maybe had some frustration or confusion, or it was like fighting to avoid feeling my own grief or to avoid my own misalignments and all that. But how beautiful. And now that we're on the other side of it, what a powerful, beautiful thing that stimulated a lot of growth and nudged each of us into the next phase of our evolution. And so as you're saying, if we can take that perspective, and it takes some zooming out, because so often when we're all tight in the fussing and fighting, and that person did that to me, therefore I need to get vengeance on them on whatever level. If we can zoom out from that, loosen that, then we can see, oh, okay, what's the lesson here? All that discomfort is trying to tell me something. And this is one of the ways that when I'm working with people or just talking to friends, when there's something uncomfortable happening, and that can be even a subtle, like having this persistent feeling, on the depressive or anxious side of things, or sometimes it's bigger things like my relationship is falling apart. I just got fired from my job. Or I didn't get hired for an opportunity that I thought was perfect for me. Trusting that redirection is a form of protection, and it's soul on some level. They're like, you think you want that but you don't actually.
Right.
And this stimuli is an invitation. Same like when you sprain your ankle, your body is not mad at you. The pain of that is sharing important information that there's something that needs to be addressed and tended to. And that is a radically different perspective than a lot of us are trained into, whereas like pain is bad. Discomfort means there's something wrong, as opposed to, hey, this is really uncomfortable. I don't know what my next job is going to be. I don't know who I am with except in the context of this relationship. And now that that's gone, this is very uncomfortable. That's not a bad thing. It's just information inviting you to reevaluate and recalibrate with what is now more authentic.
Yeah. And I mean, as you're saying this, I'm just thinking like it's so opposite societally how we're brought up, right? Like, think about from 4 or 5. What do you want to be when you grow up, Dave? What do you mean you don't know? Like, and it's like, I look at that in terms of like as a child being like, uh, as a child, my answer was a mom, right? And then
Uh,
in
yeah,
when you're a teenager and you're going to go, like, are you going to go to the University of Iowa? Where are you going? What are you doing? Like, you can't be a mom. Like, how are you going to make money? And so it's like, you're like, oh, wait, is there something wrong with stepping into that? And I'm like, well, I guess I need business, right? Like, if I need money, I'll go study business. And so I do that. And marketing, I like talking to people, I like putting things out there. And I start following that script, right? And then I get to this corporate identity of like, I'm really good at this and I am able to do this. But then, and I mean, even just last night, like we had our friends over and it was the woman that was the nanny to my daughter, like the person that I left with my kids, one of my best friends. Like, I don't regret leaving my daughter with her at all. She is an amazing human who cared and loved for my daughter in ways that like are exactly what I'd want if I had to leave her with somebody. But I told her last night, I'm like, that wasn't the point. The point was I wanted to be with my kids my whole life. That's what I wanted. So it wasn't about who was home with them. It was about like, that's not why I had kids to go leave them with somebody else, right? Like, but we're just societally at so many stages. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Who are you going to be? How are you going to make money? And it's like, I think it forces us out of authenticity into shit. I need to pick up a script. Like, who am I going to, like, what's easy? And it's to your point of earlier survival. I guess I got to go pay a bill. Like, I guess I'm just going to take this because I'm getting pressured to do something, to be somebody that I'm not. And you call this the ecotones and the zones. And I mean, I've kind of referred to this as like the messy middle. Like, we're in it,
yeah,
right? And it's a phase.
yeah,
It's not like, and then one day it was over. Like, it's like years of your life and figuring it out and conversations, to your point, of things that like don't always feel good to hear, don't always
yeah.
feel good to sit in. And it takes a lot of like introspection and figuring out like, what is this? What am I doing? What is this for? Is this really Mandy? Is this Dave? Is it Telfer? Like, who is it? And we even talked before we started recording about like, I think knowing when to knock and not knock is so important, right? Like, and we talked about this. Like, there are people that still call me my maiden name, not just Amanda, my maiden name, right? Like, and I think what that tells me is there are just people that are going to be deeply committed to a narrative of who they are and how they see you. And I guess, like what Mel Robbins says, right? Like, let them
Yeah.
do that. And then let me be authentically Mandy. And if they can't acknowledge that, then that's on them. Like, I have to just stop worrying about that, right? Like, and so you'll hear me, I see your face and it's Dave, right? But it's not like I'm unwilling to move and accept who you've grown to be. I think it's just a familiarity of like knowing you for so long and wanting to honor Telfer, but just also knowing like, oh my God, it's so good to see you, Dave. Like, so you're gonna hear me flip. And I love too that you just understand that like this isn't gonna be all of a sudden everyone's gonna seamlessly call you Telfer. And that's gonna take some stuff. And you're not taking it personally, which also shows me tremendous growth because when we left Veda Dave and that immersion, I don't think you would have been there. I think those would
No.
have felt like personal, like she's calling me Dave. And I think that alone shows me so much growth in you.
And thank you. And it's been a long process of surrendering all vengeance. And again, I'm not mad at Veda Dave. And so there's no charge there. And I love Veda Dave. And so if you call me Dave, like, great, fine. That is still a part of me. But
Right.
part of this evolutionary process is to transcend and include. I think that comes from Ken Wilber, where, we don't, you know, energy can't be destroyed. It can only be transformed, right? Second law of thermodynamics, right? So can you transcend into a new phase, a new level of identity, while also including all the parts of you that have helped you grow and become that person? And, the folks that still call you by their maiden name, I suspect that there's a level of safety, familiarity, comfort that are, again, totally valid human needs. It feels safe for them to know you as your maiden name. So, because that's a solid reference point in part of who they know themselves to be is they have a friend named your maiden name. I'm not sure what it is. And so, yeah, like you say, let them. You know that you are Mandy and all that that includes and the differentiations of that. And, change is scary and uncomfortable. And one of my favorite quotes from Mahatma Gandhi, he says, "My commitment is to truth, not to consistency." And that feels to me like this grand permission to continue evolving, even if it's uncomfortable for me or for others, or it feels inconsistent. It's like, well, your website was Veda Dave and now it's Telfer. What the heck? That's confusing and disorienting. It's like, yeah, well, it's what's true. And so, what is there are such things as universal truths, but time and space is moving and never stopping. Change is the inherent nature of things. And so what is true evolves. And it's part of our great task as humans to have the courage to evolve and shed old skins. And what you're saying before about what we're taught, how we learn to be accepted in society and by our families. Again, most of us have well-intentioned parents who did the best they could. And obviously that's not true in all circumstances, but again, it's this radical surrendering of vengeance that no matter what your relationship with your parents, as humans, they're doing the best they can. And in trying to help you, they were probably scared for your survival and they wanted you to have as good a life as possible. So they're like, yeah, what are you going to do for money? That's one of the things you need to think about and learn as a human on Earth right now is how are you going to survive? And yet in that process, they took you from that 5-year-old who just in her whole being, pure somatic awareness, no egoic entanglement, just like, I feel I want to be a mom and okay, that's super authentic. And yet, in order to be accepted in your family, in your society, you had to learn to augment that, and you got trained in another way of being where your young mind and your egoic development, you learned it's not actually safe to say I just want to be a mom. It's not actually safe to want to I just want to dance. It's like, well, that's not practical. And boys don't dance in my case, right? Boys don't dance. And so literally becomes a survival issue in my own mind that I need to set aside to exile the part of me that wants to dance and learn other survival strategies so that I can be accepted. And so as we go through our teenage years, we're creating this provisional identity. And it really is meant to be just to practice building an egoic identity. And we want to be as authentic as possible while still being accepted. So it's like everybody at school has a teenage Ninja Turtles backpack. So I need one of those to be accepted, and like I like Donatello, where my friend likes Leo,
Right.
or whatever, right? And so I'm being as authentic as I can while still being accepted. Because again, as a kid, as a teenager, it's literally a survival issue where if your family abandons you, if your culture exiles you, throughout most of human history, that's a death sentence. And so it's appropriate to seek that acceptance while still figuring out what's authentic to me. The transition into true adulthood, as I understand it, involves flipping that equation so that we want to be as accepted as possible while being truly authentic. And that is the next phase of egoic development and what I call going from ego to ecological identity, where if you can let go of the familiar identity markers, which provide safety, but are in some way inauthentic, that is going to be challenging. You're going to lose friends potentially, or at least your relationship with them is going to change. And yet, the longer you hold on to those inauthentic aspects of yourself, the more your external world is going to give you feedback that, hey, this isn't working. This is really uncomfortable. And we only change when the terror of that change is less than the discomfort of staying as we are. And so that is what we call an ecotone. And some it's this combination of external and internal feedback that tells us that something has to change. So in nature, an ecotone is the transition zone between two ecosystems, where a forest meets a prairie, for example, or where a river meets an ocean, and it's sort of neither one or the other, and it's an edge zone between one and the other, and it's these are both dangerous and incredibly biodiverse, abundant places. Where I think about, if you're an antelope grazing in the prairie, there could be a lion just a few feet hidden in the forest, and it's going to pounce, and you're going to be caught unaware. However, permaculture gardens, it's one of the core principles of permaculture is to maximize edge zones. How many of these transitional spaces can you create? Because that's where diversity arises and new life arises. And it's this very alive place. And so when we get to these zones in our own lives, the great challenge is, can we linger there? How comfortable can we become in these liminal spaces? Because so often, one relationship ends and it's really uncomfortable. And you're mad at the other person and you're sad about yourself and all these things. And how many people do you know get out of one relationship and immediately find another one
Hmm.
because it's too uncomfortable to not be in a committed romantic partnership? And how often do you then see, oh, then the same pattern plays out in that next relationship? Different person, same pattern. And then the discomfort of that is even more intense than the previous one. And the longer you go on repeating that pattern, the more uncomfortable it's going to get until you're willing to actually linger in that liminal space, to get out of a relationship and actually just sit with yourself and let that process work on you, to let yourself be devoured by that lion, right? To let the caterpillar fully dissolve into imaginal goo in order to be fully transformed into the next phase of your being. And like I said, it takes courage. It's not something we're trained to do. Traditional cultures had very clear rites of passage where the elders would recognize when the young people were in these transitional spaces and give them the guidance and the rituals and the vision quests and all these things to help them navigate that treacherous and beautiful territory. And we sort of lost that in
Yeah.
modern society, where again most of your friends and family are trying to keep themselves safe and keep you safe by, oh, you're having trouble at work, just go to therapy and learn how to cope better. Take some Adderall and just, here's a solution to keep you where you are, to keep you comfortable enough in the safe environment where you are. But at a certain point, that becomes the most dangerous thing, is to stay stuck in this inauthentic, acceptable space that is slowly killing you.
And there's signs that
You're
you're,
going to die anyway. You might as well destroy that identity without any malice in order to let the new life arise.
yeah, because there's typically signs your body's giving you that you're not listening to,
Right.
right? Like
Yeah.
panic attacks or uh, warning
If
signs.
you come home angry every day, if you wake up and don't want to get out of bed, like these are, from subtle to the gross. Yeah, panic attack is one, but just moving through the day with a pervasive anxiety, or with the, like, you're in the doldrums. And humans are designed to be healthy. Ecosystems are naturally healthy, and so it actually, unfortunately, isn't very common, but it's actually perfectly normal and healthy to wake up excited for the day, and to you've slept well, you've gotten your rest. It's like, oh cool, I get to be human again today. I wonder what's going to happen. And it's like, my dog is the best reminder, where every single day he wakes up and he's excited to dog again that day, and he cannot wait to figure out what's he going to smell, what's he going to chase, what's going to happen, how many belly rubs is he going to get. Every single day he's stoked to dog, and that is a natural state. And if and this might be radical, because that might feel completely unattainable, but if you're not feeling that, something's off on a subtle or gross level. And it could be something as simple as your diet or, sleep hygiene, but it could also be the person you're sleeping next to. It could be the way the furniture is arranged in your house. It could be how you're interacting with your professional life. Also, to say, it could also be a perfectly healthy response to a profoundly sick society, right? There's a lot to be anxious or depressed about in the larger world. And I do this check because sometimes I'm anxious or depressed because of some misalignment within myself. Sometimes anxiety or depression is an appropriate response to my environment. It's like, if you're in a physically dangerous environment and your nervous system doesn't tell you to run, that is an unhealthy response, right? And so this calibration of and another example of an ecotone is the boundary between your inner experience and the external world. So sometimes we think of that as like the edge of our skin. Some people know it to be the larger like, electromagnetic biofield or your auric field around your body. However you understand it, there is something like a boundary between your inner world and the outer world. And I think of this, you can think of the Earth's atmosphere, right? There's a boundary that holds Earth in and keeps outer space out. And there are specific conditions where something can enter through that permeable boundary. A space shuttle, in order to come back to Earth, has to enter at just the right angle. Because too steep, coming too direct, it's going to burn up in the atmosphere. Too shallow, it'll just bounce off out into deep space. And so our relationships are like this as well. Sometimes people come in too hot and they get burnt up, or they may be a meteor that hits the surface and destroys all life on the planet. That happens sometimes. Some people come in too shallow and you don't even notice, or they just bounce right off and go out into outer space. Some people come in at just the right angle. So, what am I saying? Tending to the ecotone, that boundary condition, that liminal space between your inner world and the outer world, is one of the ways to collect information about who you are and where you are and how's it going. To what extent is this choice authentic? Okay, I said this to my boss. Was that authentic? Was it acceptable? Was it somewhere in between? Was it one or the other? And this is how we're constantly tuning the instrument, because there's tension between those two, right? Like the string of a violin. That ecotone between self and other has this tension between it, and so we want to be constantly tuning to keep that nice C note, as opposed to sometimes it gets a little sharp, a little flat, and we get the feedback both internally. It's like, oh, I said that and that didn't feel good to me. That didn't feel like who I know myself to be. And sometimes you get the external feedback. It's like, you're fired. You can't say that to me. Okay, calibration, tune the instrument.
Totally. And I mean, you're saying all this and you're physically sitting in a different location. And so, two things I want to point out. One is Telfer is saying all this not just because it sounds good or it's what you think it should feel like or look like, right? Like it's lived experience. Like, and that's part of why I reached back out, right? Is because it's like he's gone through it. He sat in it, right? He's not bypassing stuff to just talk. Like if you could see him right now, and he was asking, is this going to be a video? And I'm like, just so I can see you. Because I am personally working on how to get comfortable with that going out, right? Um, but the passion that you have, like, I think they'll feel it in your voice, but this is lived experience. Like, Telfer, Dave, like, have lived this space, have sat deeply in it, and it has given you an actual physical reboot in many ways. One of being you're not even in the country anymore. You're in,
Yeah.
talk about where you are and like
Left
how you felt that
yeah,
difference too. That's an ecotone,
yeah,
right?
right, totally. Yeah, so I left Colorado after 15 years earlier this year, and it just felt like my time there had expired. And it's hard to explain why. I mean, I have a house there. I've got 15 years worth of community and connections. It's a beautiful place. People travel from all over the world to visit Colorado, and I was living there. Beautiful, beautiful place. And I was having dreams, I was having intuitions, and also external invitations and opportunities to go elsewhere. And so, weaving all that together, I spent the summer in the Pacific Northwest, and now I'm in Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is not a place that I intellectually would have chosen. It wasn't really on my radar. Of course, like, oh, I know Costa Rica is beautiful. I've got friends who have vacationed there. Awesome. But it wasn't somewhere I was like, I have to get there. And yet I followed the invitations, not really knowing what was going to happen, not really with an agenda of my own, and stepped off the edge of the proverbial cliff and let the wind currents take me. And I've landed here, and it's like a gravitational force that has drawn me in. And within a couple weeks, it's maybe 6 weeks now, I feel rooted in a community. They're connected with biodynamic farms and amazing people doing regenerative agriculture. And I'm living in a house that's totally off grid, all solar, open air, no walls or doors in this house with a beautiful view over the ocean. It's like, and like cheaper than my house in Denver. It's like living like beyond what I could have dreamed. When you do like set intentions or do a vision board, this is one of those things that is like way beyond what I could have imagined. Where, when you say your prayers, is like this or something better. This is something better. And and I am so grateful. Doesn't always turn out this way, but it's the result of some pretty courageous decisions, changing the nature of beloved relationships, uprooting myself from a stable house, a community of friends that I love dearly, being willing to leave it all behind because of a relatively subtle internal experience. So like, this isn't right anymore. This place isn't fitting. It's a sweater that's too tight and too hot. And so, okay, it's my favorite sweater, but I'm gonna take it off. And so yeah, in that transition space, it's there are lonely days, right? There are days where it's like, what the F am I doing here?
Mhm.
Like I'm far from anyone and everything, and it's unfamiliar, and mi español es más o menos,
Mhm.
and so that continues to be this liminal space, and doing the work to be comfortable as possible in the discomfort, and to just take deep breaths and be like, yeah, this is okay. I trust the trajectory, and so here we are.
I love it. I mean, I studied abroad in Spain for 6 months and I've been to Costa Rica. It's amazing. And it's crossed my mind to like take the kids down there and like experience Costa Rica in a different way. I think like culturally, you would experience so many things that just like we would never get here. And to your point about taking off the sweater, right? Like that's what took me to Spain in college. Just like I broke up with a guy and kind of looked around like, I know all these streets. I know all of this so well. Like, what is out there? And it's experiences like that. It's like saying, F this. I'm trying something different. And like completely changed my worldview about everything. Like going over there, feeling like I am an American. Like, oh yeah. Right. And like so quickly being humbled, like, well, we think Americans are dumb. And like, how many languages do you know? One, wow. Like, and just people, and they don't even act like that, right? They're like, I just know a little bit of English. And then like 4 hours later, they're like, that's about all I know. And I'm like, man, when I tell you I know a little German, it's like Das Bier ist gut and Sprechen Sie Deutsch. Like, and my German knowledge, right? Like they're so humble about how much they know. And they're very culturally diverse. And just that opposite perspective of how America's viewed was just so humbling. And also just like, wow, so many people just have this viewpoint of like the center of the world is Johnson County, Iowa. And it's so not, right? Like there's a whole world out there. And that just was so fascinating to me. And it gave me this perspective of like going to a new culture and understanding it and just being eyes wide open and genuinely curious. And how do you guys do life here? And like, what does that look like? What does that feel like? And even that decision for me was like, I could have gone and lived with Americans in Spain, but I was like, why would I do that? Like, that'd be no different than living in a dorm or in an apartment building in America with Americans that have a uniquely American experience. I lived with a Spanish mom and I still talk to her to this day. And she's like in her late
Oh, that's
80s.
wonderful.
Yeah, it's the conversations are a lot shorter because my Spanish is not so good. Like, right? It's
Mhm.
más o menos, and it's very hard because the translation's purely on me, and I'm just not where I was fluency wise with it. Um, but just she touched my life in a deep, deep way that like would 100% shift the course of my life, right? And after college, moving to Chicago was never on my radar, but that's what I did because I felt like I gotta bust out of this cocoon. And to your point, and it didn't like I felt like I needed to keep chasing a little bit bigger of a world. And what's
Yeah.
odd and not odd at all, right, is that like we're right there again. Like the
Yeah.
sweaters really hot. It's becoming not my favorite sweater. Like I'm ready to
Yeah.
donate it and bust out. So this ecotone, like it feels like we're is it constant? Is it once every 5 years? Like when are you done dealing with ecotones? Just like is that just life?
In a lot of ways, it sure is. It sure is. And and we evolve through alternating bouts of chaos and order, right? Where typically what happens is the snow globe gets shaken and then it settles. And then you shake it again. And and so the trick is different areas of your life are going through different changes at different times. So maybe you've had this experience where having kids, going from maiden to mother, is a major ecotone. It's a major transition in your life, right? And so that was maybe enough hubbub, and then as soon as you sort of say like, okay, cool, I'm okay with this identity as mother, and it's working. Okay, well now your career is going through an ecotone, and like, oh, I have to leave this corporate thing and start a homestead, and that's the transition that's happening. And sometimes they all converge, and it's all happening all at once. But generally, the pattern is something like, we're at some sort of homeostasis, and cool, like I've got a house and a job and and I love my family, and cool, great. And then there's some initiating incident. A parent passes away. You break up with a friend or a lover. The economy crashes or whatever it is, and that shakes the snow globe. And all of a sudden, the familiar reference points just aren't there anymore. And that can be destabilizing. I'm getting the image of, falling off your surfboard and the surf is twisting you around and you don't know which way is up. You and it's actually, what's the advice in those moments? Don't swim. Don't try to fix it. Just go into fetal position and let the surf bring you back to the surface, because it will. But it's actually ill-advised to choose your own direction at that time. To take drastic action is not the correct thing to do usually, right? Sometimes there are times where, okay, there's a shark coming and I should be swimming very actively in this direction. And so this is one of the great disciplines, is to know which time is which. And so, for example, I'm really curious about this edge zone that you're navigating with going from audio to video. I kind of want to poke at you
Okay.
about that. This seems like, well, you tell me. So far you've been doing this podcast just audio, and
Yep.
that has been edgy enough, right? Going from not podcasting to podcasting, that's
Right.
been a transition. And so tell me a little bit about that evolution and what it's like even just to be heard. Forget being seen, just to become visible with your voice in the world.
It's honestly like a joke come true. Tom and I used to jokingly be like, I have a voice for radio, and he would call it Midday with Mandy. When like just randomly we would be talking and be like, hey, it's Midday with Mandy. What are you up to? And like I would just always would joke into this like voice, right? And so it's not surprising, I guess, that I started a podcast, especially because I like to talk. It is weird to hear my own voice, and it's always weird too. Like the kids sometimes will just like get the iPad and play an episode. And I think that's fascinating, right? Like what pulled them to do that and then click on that episode. But it's also been confusing when I'm home and I'll be like, who are you guys talking to? Like, what's going on? Or they'll quote me on stuff and he'll be like, hey, you, yes, you. Can I ask you something? I'm like, that sounds so familiar, honey. Like, where'd that come from? He's like, that's in your podcast, mom. I'm like, oh, that's why I know that. Like, so just that's been weird, like very weird. But also part of like the guidepost is like they're listening. And I think
Yeah.
like just humanity feels so heavy that when they ask me in 20 or 30 years, like, what did you do?
Yeah.
Like, humanity was on a precipice. Did you sit on your couch and binge watch Netflix? I mean, with confidence, I'm gonna be like, fuck no, I did
Yeah.
not do that. I was trying in my authentic, messy, truthful way. That's who I am today. I was trying to have conversations. I was trying to shift people, show them what's important. I was trying to talk to your peers' parents about what's important in life because I'm trying to look down the road at how they're going to operate in society. I mean, Telfer, like you have a similar personality as I do, right? Like we get freaking passionate and we feel it, and people can feel it in our voice. And for me, that was always like, you can feel that from me right now. I wear my heart on my sleeve. The listeners can feel when I am sad. They can feel when I am overjoyed. They can feel when I'm pissed. They can feel when I'm happy. That even causes me to pause. Unlike a lot of my listeners are people like you. And like I know many of them, right? And it's like they can feel the heaviness that I bring when I am going through it. And I don't want to put that
And
on them.
right. And so I'm curious, what's that like for you to be seen that way, to be so witnessed?
Yeah, it's hard because I think authentically it's showing up and saying like what you're feeling is real, but also like knowing that they feel that and not wanting to add to the heaviness because they're already going through their own stuff. Right. And
Yeah.
so it's this balance of like, and this is my struggle with AI is like, I use AI and I've had dreams that it's demonic and like we shouldn't trust what's behind it. And I've seen it already like planting seeds for me that I like in my gut feel repulsed to. Like, no, it's not right. And I'm like, what is the freaking end game here? Like, and so it's like, okay, I've been able to put out so much and move so fast on the podcast because I have used it as a tool to not play to the algorithm and to abandon that, which I'm highly considering right now, means I wouldn't be able to put out episodes in the frequency that I'm doing. And I already, and we've talked about like you and I are both perfectionists, right? Like I said, I'm going to do this. I want to do this. And when I don't, other people aren't asking me, Mandy, where's your episode? It's me feeling like I let people down
Yeah.
on a Wednesday, even when they're telling me, like, you're not. We get it. It's been a hard year. And I believe
Yeah.
that to be genuine and true, right? But then you're getting stats from Buffer and stats from this that are like, you need to put out, you need to put out. And it's like, it doesn't feel right. Right. So
Yeah.
it's the transition to video, why I reject it. A lot of insecurity about just like how I look, right? And just
Mm.
I valued like if what I'm saying is important, you should just tune into what I have to say and not judge the space that I'm in, what I'm wearing, how my hair looks. Like these things don't actually matter, right? Like, and so it feels
Yeah.
performative to want to get on video because what I actually enjoy is being able to just show up once the kids are in bed at like 10:30, to not wear a bra, like, which I am today, right? But it's like, I value that. Like, just being able to, like, whew, what a day. The kids are done. Like, this is what's on my heart, and to just pull up and to do it. But I've also done scripting because I feel like I enjoy writing. Like, I really, really enjoy writing. And so that's been a way for me to do that, to feed that. I like to write outlet. And I feel like a lot of times when I go off script, I just frickin' ramble and I squirrel and I'm all over the place. And I feel like I'm talking to people like me that can't always listen to the squirrel chase, or they don't like, which is exactly what this conversation is, right? Like, where sometimes it's like, let's just put it all away and just be. And that feels very authentically Mandy. And then it's like this pull of like, but I still like to write, but I never feel like my writing's good enough.
Hmm.
And like reading from a script feels performative, but it also like feels deeply intentional because I spent hours on every word in there. And they did come
Yeah.
from the heart, you know? And so that's kind of like behind the scenes, like really just the truth of where I'm at with all that. And the, yeah, it's like, okay, so if I'm going to go on video, do I need this beautiful backdrop? Like, I don't have that. I don't have a space for that. Well, then it's the pressure to like, well, should I be buying a shed to like turn into a podcast studio? I don't have the money for that. Like, and just
Right.
whether they're there or not, they're expectations of things that we should do if we want to be successful. And then it puts this whole like, yeah, but like that's not why I started any of this. I don't actually like, I don't know that that was the end goal for me. It was just more so to like, what's up? Like, this is
Yeah.
my heart, someone that I think is doing good things and that we need to talk about, and like a fight that I'm going to show my kids. Um, I stood up. I did what
Yeah.
I know how to do. And I think I can say that without saying, you need to start a podcast, whoever's listening, right? And if you feel like you should, like you consider or you're thinking through, right? It's like, if you're feeling that nudge, go for it. Do I think everybody needs to start a podcast to do what I'm doing or to stand up for their kids? No. What I'm simply saying is like, find your way,
Right.
find your way.
Right.
And I think it's just a challenge of like society and systems have made it insanely easy for you to numb out and just get by.
Yeah.
And is that something you're comfortable telling your kids you did? Right.
Yeah.
And like, or like, who are you going to be talking to when you're 80 on the porch? You know, like, what are you going to tell them that at this moment in time you did differently? And it doesn't have to be buying a microphone and starting a podcast. It could just be simply like, I pushed pause. And to Dave's point, sat in a freaking ecotone when everything was telling me to keep showing up and doing the same shit just the same way or even a little differently. Like, it's pushing pause and saying, what are we doing this for? What actually matters? And that's where, like, I just keep looking at Tom and my kids. And it's like the wolf pack. That's
Yeah.
like the rest is noise. And sometimes that means I don't reach out to repair in the moment because it's like there's stuff going on with the wolf pack that I need to prioritize.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I answered the whole question on why
No,
not going to
it's
video, but
beautiful.
like it's so much, right? And it gets to like scripts about even how sexualized we are to marketing things to children and like 9-year-old influencers on makeup. They've lost the
Right.
ability to play. Like, I didn't get that
Yeah.
expectation until like 16, 17, 18. And to have that placed on me a whole decade early, I think would have made this transition to video like that much more impossible.
Yeah.
And
Right.
to your point,
So
like,
let me,
oh, it's so much, Dave. Like,
it's a lot. So let me name a few things I'm tracking in there. One is the longing to leave your kids a better world, to have your impact on a troubled, confusing world. And that sounds really authentic to who you are. And I know you as a passionate person who's also got this intelligence and recognition of patterns, and so this feels like that's the longing towards a deeper sense of authenticity. So as you know, before you had a podcast, all of that energy was there, but where was it going? It's maybe being diffused in a bunch of different ways, a conversation here, a conversation there. And as that longing got stronger and more urgent, all of a sudden you had to do something with it. And this was the channel that opened up. The podcast is the delivery system for that soul level gift that you have. And and this always happens every single time, as soon as you take a courageous step in the direction of your authentic expression, the issues of acceptance come up. And people will push. Some people are going to be stoked and cheer you on and be like, yes, Mandy, onward. And some people are going to be like, well, I don't accept that. I don't agree with that. Um, I judge her this or that way, and therefore she's no longer acceptable to me. Her authenticity is unacceptable. Like, okay, and what can you do but let them? And this is part of the courage required to make that shift, is trusting that your authentic expression may lose you some friends, family, followers, but it's the only way your true tribe can identify you. That's the only way to put up the accurate flag so that people know, like, yep, that's where I belong as well. And like we said, like, only when we're in that sovereign place can we actually be in authentic connection with others. And so I hear this in this switch to video, was like, will people accept me if I'm not wearing a bra, if it's not a fancy background, if my hair is mussed, or it's 11 at night and I've been dealing with kids all day and I'm a little bit. And that's a perfectly valid question. Who would you know accept that? And the trick that I've learned over and over again is, actually, there's a bunch of people that would be stoked if you showed up that way and be like, gosh, she's so real. Oh my God, it's such a relief to see someone who's showing up fully authentically. What a relief. How much permission does that give me to do the same thing? And, to be fair, it's also fully authentic for some people to spend an hour doing their makeup and getting the camera just right in the
Right.
background. That's also their fully authentic expression. Is that
Right.
wrong or bad? There's nothing. It's just as long as it's true to you, then it's going to reach the people that it's meant to reach. And the thing about connection is that it's only possible in the messy, rough spots. Think about, like, if you've ever done pottery or played with clay, and you've got two different pieces and you want to put them together, you have to scar up the edges, right? You got to create some messiness, and that's what helps the two pieces merge together. Whereas if you have two pieces and you glaze them and put them in the kiln and take them back out and they're all nice and shiny and painted and pretty, there's no way for them to connect. They'll just, slide off of each other. And so, as a fellow perfectionist, I've seen that over and over again, where it's actually the messy parts that are attractive and create connection. And so, that's true in our story. And one of the questions that comes up is, okay, perfectionism, interesting. Um, for what part of you is perfectionism keeping you safe? In what ways is perfectionism working for you? You could see it as an obstacle. It's like, oh, I just want to put out more episodes, and I'm the stupid perfectionism is getting in the way of doing what I want to do. But also, isn't that perfectionism a form of protection against the risk of not being accepted for the imperfections, for the messy bits?
Yeah, I
Just a
think
guess.
the thing that helped me break or get better at not being such a perfectionist is learning innovation and entrepreneurship. Like learning
Yeah.
lean startup, right? And the minimum viable product, and not having to have a
Yeah.
perfect product to launch something. Like, and you've done this with your programs too, which like either gets us successful or gets us burned, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that's the risk we take when we do minimum viable products or just in time delivery or like building the plane while we're flying it, right? It's like this concept of I just need to be a step ahead. And
Yeah.
there's value in that, right? Because I mean, the way that I taught this when I was teaching innovation is like there's a bullseye. And if you're just going to shoot for the target for 3 years straight, and then you step back and you realize, like, oh my God, you were actually hitting the lower rung the whole time and you were constantly readjusting and hitting over here, right? But like it took you too long to step back and see that.
Mm.
Where the MVP concept and innovation and entrepreneurship really gets you to stop and be like, I shot, oop, that was way over there. Okay, let's back up and shoot again. And oh, that was a little bit better, but now it's like high and right. Okay, let's recalibrate, right? And that's what I kind of hear you talking about with an ecotone. And it like I wasn't exposed to innovation or entrepreneurship or any of that really until my career in 2012. And learning those concepts is what kind of really helped me start to like ungrip this perfectionistic hold that like definitely still has a tether to me for sure, right? Like there was a lot of pride growing up and like this is the right way to do things and this is perfect and like you do your best. And I don't
Mhm.
necessarily disagree, right? With like do your best. Give it all you got. But like to what end? I think, right? Where
Mhm.
it's like does this have to be completely perfect to go out? Like what is the value in that? Who even defines that as perfect, right? Like things like that I've gotten better with over the years. Room for improvement still 100%. I think always that's going to be something that I try to like let go of. And I think the next shift too is also like stop spending so much time editing or taking out parts that are messed up, right? And just let it flow. That would save a lot of time. Um, and these are things that I'm working on and trying to get to. And I think like when I do get there, I will feel safer. But it's also like telling myself, like, in January, I'm going to go on video. Like,
Yep.
and I think making that declaration for myself is like, all right, Mandy, it's kind of like that shit or get off the pot, like, and I do that
Yeah.
to myself a lot, which is like, and I think it's also getting back to that training and innovation of like, sometimes you just got to bite the bullet and do it. Like if you're waiting for the perfect time, it might never come. Like, what if
Yeah.
the chaos or the mess is the perfect time? Like,
Is actually the invitation. It creates the opening. And so
yes,
what you're describing with going on video is what I would call an experimental threshold crossing. And so, again, we're in an ecotone. We're approaching a precipice where the old story is no longer true. The new story is not yet clear. And so, how do we clarify that new story? I was like, well, we do experiments and we take what we know, what glimpses we have of this fresher, more authentic version of ourselves, and do experimental threshold crossings. So, for example, just to make something up, someone who loves to sing, but has been told they're bad at it. Very common thing, right? Well, as they get to this point where they need to express themselves, they're like writing songs, or they're hearing music in their head, but they're not someone who sings. That's been suppressed or exiled, that part of them. Well, an experimental threshold crossing would be to go sing karaoke. Go by yourself, no friends around. And or there's on YouTube, there's a bunch of you can do karaoke through YouTube these days. And so to do that at home in the mirror, to record yourself singing and listening to it back. Just that, as you said, your voice sounds weird, doesn't sound the way you think it does. And so just to sing and then listen to it back, that could be an experimental threshold crossing. Then and we see how it feels. Is it okay? Is there an adjustment to make? And then maybe we go to karaoke. Then maybe we go to karaoke with friends. And so I'm curious if you have a sense of, as you step into this uh, publicly authentic identity as a podcaster who talks about kids and culture and spiritual evolution and agriculture and all these diverse but interwoven issues. And think about going on video, but it's an edge. You don't know if, is it really necessary? Is it part of the mission? Does it serve the mission? Okay, do the experiment. What, just, record it and maybe just show it to your family first. Maybe, who are your 10 most loyal listeners? Listeners, raise your hand or reach out. And if you've listened to every episode so far, reach out and say, hey, I want to be part of the beta group or whatever, right? And these experimental threshold crossings, because, there is also such thing as an authentic failure. And where you really went for it with your full authenticity and realize like, oh, that actually wasn't it. And video's not actually for me. I don't really care or need it. Whatever, fine. And the manager of my semi-pro soccer team is always saying, gentlemen, we never lose. We either win or we learn.
Mm.
And that is a beautiful philosophy on life where like, oh, cool. You did the video, you didn't like it, other people didn't like it, whatever. Okay, authentic failure. What's the next experiment? You know, maybe it's more scripting, maybe it's less scripting, and just that attitude of curiosity and experimentation, I think it's the only way. I don't know. I don't know another way to navigate life in a way that will keep me sane, at least.
Yeah, I feel that, right? And it's like, I think we have a radical idea on that in terms of like, we are not afraid to set things down and try something different. Like for us, that's very easy to pick up, but other people have a harder time with that. And then I'm not to say that we just like fly through that without feeling it or stumbling around in it, because I think that we would both say that we 100% do. Um,
Yeah.
it just, it's all interesting and it's all life. And I think we started by saying, like, just it's been a reflective phase. But to your point, right? Like, we have different types of ecotones, and then, like, personally, and then as a family. What we haven't talked about yet, and this is kind of like the last place I want to take us to, is like collectively the
Yeah.
ecotone, right? And so this whole conversation has been about shedding skins. And this is like the year of the snake, which does not
Hmm.
end January 1st. Like my New Year's Day episode talks about this. Like, right, we have adopted a solar system based on the sun, and not the solar system with the planets, but like our
Yeah.
calendar is based
It's a
on,
solar calendar. Yeah.
yes. And like the Chinese zodiac and a lot of other cultures use the lunar calendar based on the moon. And like this gets me Telfer into like sidereal astrology, like
Sidereal. Yep.
learning that blew my mind. So I'd love for you to just hint on that. And then the year of the snake. Like, I don't know if you're more into like the differences in the animals. Like, what does it mean to go from the snake to the horse? Or if you'd rather talk about the 9 to the 1, or is it a
Yeah.
10? And like, just,
Uh-huh.
I kind of want to let you just run with all of that.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And yeah, so calendar systems are one of my passions. I'm a big advocate for calendar change. I believe that would be the most revolutionary change we could make in Western culture would be to change the calendar, change the way we measure days and years. Um, because that is the template that guides our daily realities. And so our solar based calendar is this very linear, masculine, from point A to B. And the sun is very consistent, right? It rises and sets every day in this very sort of consistent, measurable, predictable way. Whereas the moon goes through its phases, right? It ebbs and flows and it is in a different position relative to the sun. And sometimes it's full, sometimes it's new. And it's a much more feminine, cyclical, It doesn't, the full moon isn't on the same day of the month every year, right? It's this got this little bit of wonkiness to it, which is an evolutionary force. And so there's all sorts of calendrical models from around the world, and you can do a solar calendar, a lunar calendar, you can do a solilunar calendar, combining the two. There's all sorts of beautiful calendars, and so I'm happy to nerd out about that. But for now, 2025 has been a 9 year. And so in the Pythagorean system of numerology, there are several systems, but Pythagorean is the one I know. There are only nine numbers, really, right? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. And after that, you're starting over at one with a zero added. And then you're just reusing those nine numbers all the way up, right? We do take into consideration master numbers 11, 22, 33, 44, 55, all the way up. Um, and there's sort of infinite complexity in the system. However, 2025, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 5, that adds up to 9. So this last year has been a global 9 year. 2026, 2 plus 0 plus 2 plus 6, that equals 10, which then you reduce it again, 1 plus 0 equals 1. So we're going from a 9 year to a 1 year. And this is the evolutionary cycle where, yeah, we go 1 through 9, and then we reach that next phase of evolution. You're saying you just turned 40. Great, you just reached level 4, right? And so the whole planet is in this reset moment, and we can see this 9 to 1 transition is the beginning of one cycle, the end of another. And we can see, I mean, what has happened in this last year. How many systems, norms have just collapsed or been dissolved or destroyed. And what a tumultuous year. You look at all these different people's year in review, it's just been a nonstop onslaught of radical changes. It's not like one big change and then a bunch of little things. It's major changes every single day, it seems like, and big events that get lost in the news cycle because there's another even more massive event. And so this is the nature of a 9. It's the end of a cycle. And so it's wrapping things up and destroying what's not coming forward. And so it's one of the meditations I would offer you for this New Year's would be to think about this last year, yes, but also the last 9 years. The last time the whole planet went through this 9 to 1 shift was 2016 into 2017. And so it's worth thinking about what was happening in your life in 2016 and then what happened in 2017. And that might give you some sense of the way history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes, right? And so what was happening, in what ways were 2016 and 2025 similar? And then if you want to know what's going to happen in 2026, what happened in 2017? What was the vibe? What changed? And to think about it this time, what do you want to bring with you from those last 9 years, or at least the last year? What's the nutrients that you can digest and want to carry with you that are going to, nourish the tissues of your body? And what's the waste product? What do you need your belly and your enzymes to process? And you can just poop that out and flush it away. No malice. Thank you, but goodbye. And that's a nice meditation for this time. And just to say, the 1 year is not necessarily stable either, but the 1 year is where the new story starts to become a little more clear. And even thinking about, like, think of the shapes of the letters, right? Depending how you draw a 9, it's sort of a curly Q, right? You drawing a 9, you could almost just make it a spiral, this spiral all the way down, right? Whereas the 1 is, it's almost like a phallic shape, right? Or it's also like an arrow. It's basically an arrow pointing in a direction. And so when that 1 comes on, it is a new direction. we're pointing, and we start to get a sense of, okay, having been sort of caught in this whirlpool, being, pulled down into the black hole or the bottom of the ocean, now we've got a new direction. We've got a trajectory. And the first basically 9 months of the year are all about figuring out what is that trajectory. And so there's a lot to look forward to. Um, and it's going to continue to change because, you know, collectively, metaphorically, mythopoetically, yeah, numerologically, the old cycle's over, the new cycle is beginning, but it's just as hectic to start up and try to go in a new direction. That can be a wobbly process at first, right? When you are on your bicycle from a standstill, those first couple pedals, it's like, oh, okay, we got to wobble a little bit to get going. And then once you get up to speed, it's a little more smooth. So that's what's happening this coming year.
I love that. And I love the advice that you give about like look back at the last 9 years and think through that. So I actually have started to do that. This turning 40 has made me so reflective. Like, not, I really feel like the 40s are going to be like one of my best decades yet. But what it's done, and I think too, like, I had an aunt and uncle pass away this year, and my grandpa's memoir has been floated around, and like
Mm.
stories have been shared from that. Tom's grandma wrote a massive memoir on her life and her um Tom's grandpa's life. He passed away too. And so it's been sitting with all these people's memories. And then I've been reading Virginia Woolf, A Room of One's Own. And the end of
Mm-mm.
that book is like an autobiographical timeline. And I was like, that's interesting. And so what I did I had a solo overnight for my 40th, and I just like
Cool.
listen to nothing. Like I didn't listen to music. I didn't turn the TV on. I didn't listen to podcasts. I just sat in silence and was trying to figure out like I feel like all the noise is just like disconnecting us from ourselves, from our intuition. And I was just trying to tap back in. And I picked up the Virginia Woolf book and was reading it. And it's kind of dense. Like it's a lot, right? And it's like 4 pages of this inner dialogue. It's like, okay, you saw a woman. Like come on, like, and at the same time, like she's freaking brilliant. Like she
Yeah.
really is deeply thinking through things. And so I pulled up a Word doc and I started to like write down, um, like 1985, I was born, the eldest daughter of these people, right?
Yep.
And like just starting to write down, okay, so this is my family of origin, the family that I created, like birth dates, miscarriages. And then I started to write down all of my jobs. Like who was I working for? What did I learn there? And then like where did I go to school? Like
Yep.
geographically. And then like what was the culture? What were the lessons I learned? Who were the relationships that I had there? And the houses that I lived with. And then I started to do the
Yep.
numerology on like what that address meant and like how did that pan out in my life and like where did I move from place to place to place. I've only begun to put this document together, but it has been fascinating and just like I think I could take this a million ways. And I love patterns and thinking through this. And it's just been like it's this question of like I think the biggest question I sat with was like, how did I get here? And not that I don't like it, right? But just like life is a crazy ride. Like, how
Yeah.
and why am I here right now? What, who is Mandy? What is she doing? What is she like? Why am I the mom of these three people, the wife of Tom? What do
Yeah.
they need from me? What does the world expect of me? How does that feel to me? Just like very contemplative, right?
Yeah.
But it's like I think this what have I gotten out of that? Right? And like what have I learned? And just like where have I been hit over the head with the same pattern playing out that I just haven't seen and
Yeah.
trying to figure that out. So I guess Telfer, I just want to ask like you specialize in ecotones and sitting in the messy middle and going through it. A lot of people are going to you. I mean, like, I love too how this whole like quote interview has flipped, right? Where you're like, let me ask you some questions. And I love that
Poking
because
you a little bit.
I
Yeah.
came to you for that. Like that's how our relationship started, right? And I always offer that. Like I'm like, yes, poke at me. Like I to be self-aware, I think it goes both ways. So like I never want
Yeah.
quote interviews to be like, this is a rigid script that I'm the only one to last. No, like, yes, tell me where you see it. I think we have to have open dialogue in that way. And I love that. Um, but just you're working with people that are going through a lot. You have gone through a lot. I have gone through a lot. That said, even with this reflective angle, if people are sitting with it, what advice would you give them going into a 1 year? Like, how can you make the best of this next year, knowing it's not going to be rainbows and Skittles necessarily? Like, it's not just going to
Yeah.
change overnight. How can we get the most
Yeah.
out of it? Like, what would be the best
Yeah.
advice to give us?
It's a great question. And I think what you just said, it's not going to change overnight. And uh one of the things my teacher says to me all the time is to remember deep time. And what he means by that is th- think in terms of geological time. Think in terms of cosmic time. How long has the moon been orbiting the Earth? How long did it take for the Himalayan mountains to form? And if you look at your life in that context, a lot becomes clear. And then something you said before made a lot of sense to me, in that the present moment is an ecotone between the past and future. It's this quite fine line, this present moment, but it is the boundary condition between past and future.
Hmm.
And so I love this life review that you did. I've done similar things at various points. I was on a 4-day vision fast, and one of my tasks every day that I had offered myself was, there's a great tree, and I sat in front of the tree and told my life story. And by the time I left, I'd gotten till I was 3 years old,
Mm.
because it starts way before me. And as soon as I started, I went down that path, and it just expanded infinitely out into the past. And so, that process of, yeah, reviewing everything that's ever happened in the history of the cosmos has led to you and I being here now. And so a little review of what's in that direction. The other thing that I've often done is, in these meditative moments, doing internal parts work and consulting with your inner child, or your internalized mother, parent, your inner critic has a lot of advice. One of the things I've learned to do is to sit with my inner elder. So I go internally and ask for the advice of my inner 80-year-old. What does the 80-year-old version of me know that I might like to know at this point? And it's the most profound source of comfort and clarity that I've found, because very often, basically what he says every time in various ways is, if you want to be who I am now, you must do this in this moment. And so that has helped me make courageous choices. Like, yep, that 80-year-old is the one who jumped off the cliff and moved to Costa Rica at this time, who chose not to continue with this relationship with a beloved human, but it's just not quite, it's not the right fit for now. And so um, consulting with your inner elder is recognizing that you have equal access to past and future. There's like a bunch of physics that proves this. It's equally in both directions, and we're here in the present moment, this liminal space. Um, the the key thing in all of this, and I was rereading a journal from that vision fast I went on recently, and the night before I went out, I found this note where it says, "It is better to remain in the conversation than to figure it out." And that to me is the essence of Ecotone Academy and all the work I'm doing, because what we're looking for is responses and not answers. Very rarely, if you go out in the wilderness and tell your story to a tree or a stream or a stone, you're not going to get an answer. What does it mean? What should I do? Should I stay in my job or should I quit? You're not going to get an answer, but you're going to get a response. As you're sitting holding the question, the butterfly flaps in front of your face, an eagle flies overhead, a bear walks up, right? That's a response. It's not an answer. And answers are boring, you know, because you ask a question, you get an answer, the conversation's over. Whereas if you're exchanging responses, then we're in the conversation, and that's an ongoing process that keeps us moving and allows for the evolution to take place. And so that would be my overarching invitation would be to seek responses as opposed to answers, remain in the conversation, stop trying to figure it out. And I, that phrase "figure it out," I hear in my vocabulary. Oh, I just got to figure this out. I'm just gonna figure it out. And I keep catching myself. It's like, no, I don't need to figure it out. The cosmos, the natural world, is operating according to predictable principles. It's got its own internal logic, right? I don't have to figure that out. What I want to do is remain in the conversation with the cosmos, with the more than human world, with my fellow humans, with my internal parts and my soul level self. And what joy to just be in conversation. What else is there? We are intimately interwoven within the web of all beings, and we the great mistake we make is thinking we're alone. We cannot possibly be alone, even when we wish we could be.
Right.
And so to just be in that conversation, exchanging information with the whole web of all beings is, you know, the aspiration, as far as I'm concerned.
The undertone I hear you saying is trust.
Yeah,
Like notice and trust, right? Like notice the butterfly. The things that like when you're looking so hard for a yes or no, you're going to miss these things. And so to breathe and notice and then to trust that Costa Rica is where you're supposed to be. Like you were
yeah.
led there for a reason, right? And that trust, right? And then I think this is what I'm currently doing is asking myself like why am I not fully trusting?
Mm,
Like
hmm.
and I think it's the letting go, right? The surrendering, the control of like and this gets right back to like ego over to eco, right? Like
Yeah,
to think that we have enough control to completely go where we think we're supposed to go and do, right? Like
yeah.
to let go of that and to just truly sink into trusting. That's
And that it really does get to the specific definition of that. What does it mean to go from ego to eco? It is to redefine your personal center of gravity and redefine to whom do you belong. And because the ego is a personal bubble. And there's nothing actually wrong with the ego. It is the force that lets every cell in your body know that it is a part of a larger whole. Totally okay to have an egoic structure. However, the ego believes it belongs to itself, that is a self-contained being, whereas an ecologically based identity, an ecocentric person knows that they belong to the whole world. They know that okay, yes, your body is a bunch of individual cells that compose a larger whole. Just so you as a being are a part of a larger whole that is your family, your society, your local ecosystem, the planet Earth, the solar system, all of you are one part of that larger whole as well. And when we have that expanded definitions of ourselves, we have more resources to call on. We can trust, we can relax into the and trust the web is going to catch us. And And yeah, we get to trust that the butterfly actually is communicating to us, because that could sound like a crazy idea. Like, why would I tell my story to a stream or a stone? That sounds like something a crazy person would do. Uh, However, the land responds. And if you have enough trust that the more than human world has its own intelligence that you are interacting with, that becomes an experimental threshold crossing where, okay, I was speaking my story out loud, sitting alone in the forest, just telling my story to the stream, and then a butterfly flitted by, and my immediate response to that was to think about this person or to remember this other story or to feel delight or grief, to trust that that is a form of communication and experiment with that. What would it be like to be a person who takes that message seriously? What would it be like to move through the world as one who is in consistent conversation with the natural world and the more than human world, and to take those messages sincerely? What would it be like? Just do the experiment, see what happens. And maybe that's not authentic to you, but I've never met anybody for whom being in conversation with the natural world is inauthentic,
Mhm.
because you are a natural born earthling. You're an animal here on this weird, wild, wonderful planet, whether you like it or not for now.
Right. Telfer, I could keep talking to you for hours.
All day.
I
Yeah.
find it fascinating, and we bob and weave between so many things, and
Yeah.
it's so fun to talk with you, and like we haven't even scratched the surface on so many things that you know about, have taught me
Not even close.
about, and I just want to encourage anyone that's felt like, oh, Telfer has
I'm
a
in an
way
ecotone.
of talking to me. He's making sense, or I feel like connected with him. Where can these people find you? Where do you want them to go? How can they dive deeper with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So the place to connect with my work is Ecotone Academy, and Ecotone is Ecotone, like eco and like the tone of like a dial tone. And so the website is ecotone.academy. Super simple. Um, I'm on Instagram as at Telfer.wildmindguide. That's one of the trainings and professional identities I carry, is as a wild mind guide. So Telfer.wildmindguide, and that's the same for my Substack, which is becoming more and more active, which is wildmindguide.substack.com. And so those are the three places I'm most active. And just to say, January 19th, I'm offering an 8-week program called Timecraft, and we're gonna dive deep into this question of what is time, like what is it, and how does it work, and how you can learn to flow downstream with it as opposed to constantly fighting upstream, and being feeling late or rushed or stressed about time, or like, am I wasting time? Am I late? All these complex and disharmonious relationships we have with time, which is the defining feature of our reality in so many ways. And so we're going to play with the 5 different types of time, how you can choose which type of time you want to experience in any given moment, and how you can organize your life according to organic time, when to work, when to rest, and when the natural world is going to most support those activities and make it easier for you. So that information is at ecotone.academy.
Awesome. And I will link all of that in the show notes if you want just easy access to all of Telfer's links. Just head down to the show notes and you can connect with him there. Telfer, thank you, thank you, thank you for sharing your heart, your brain, your journey, your advice, and your words with me and all the wild ones listening today.
Thank you, Mandy. What a joy.
I appreciate it.
Wow. What a fun conversation with my friend Telfer. You know, it feels like just yesterday that Tom and I were going through the immersion with him and learning so much from him. And at the same time, it feels like so long ago because we've both gone through and done so much since then. I love that we can just pick right back up from where we were and move forward in such a positive way. To you, Wild One, thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for thinking deeply, for questioning boldly, and choosing to live your life with more intention. That choice, it doesn't just change your day, it ripples. Speaking of ripples, if something sparked in this episode for you today, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend? Send it to someone who's thinking a little differently and might find some inspiration or some reflection in listening to this episode. And if you want to go deeper or connect with Telfer, all of the links are in the show notes below, so be sure to check that out. Until next time, my friend, stay rooted, be brave, and live wildly intentional.